Welcome to John Martin Talks, where we battle ignorance and apathy daily. The growing ignorance of just how special this experiment we call the United States of America is, and the apathy that we can't or won't do anything and everything to save her. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we got a great show for you today. We're going to start out with an article about Nigel Farage, the guy who was the champion of Brexit in the across the pond there in the UK. He's been under fire here lately for some things he said on a radio show, and he is speaking out, and he is saying something that applies to our side of the pond as well as his, and that people are scared to say what they really think, and we're going to expand upon that in just a moment. And then, if you've been following what's been happening out in Seattle, where this group combined Antifa, Black Lives Matter, and various other groups have literally and figuratively taken over a 7-block area in Seattle. There's some dispute about the actual size of it, as small as 4, as big as 7, but there's no dispute that they are controlling that area, that there's very little, if any, police presence there. And there's differing opinions as to whether that is a positive thing or a good thing. So we're going to give you an opinion piece from Politico of a guy who basically says that we're all getting it wrong and that Black Lives Matter is getting it right. And then if we have time, we're going to get into a sports story about the NBA and how, according to Kyrie Irving, NBA players are being exploited. They're actually being exploited, used and abused was his term, and we'll tell you what all that means. But we're going to start out with this Breitbart article. But before I get any further, I just want to make a major announcement in case you are looked at our show yesterday and see today something vastly different. Yes, I got my first store-bought haircut in 3 months. Now, my wife filled in between times trying to keep me from looking like a mangy old hound dog, but I got my first store-bought haircut. Look at it. Ain't I pretty? Anyway, it's a major milestone. I never thought about the fact that barbers and hairdressers and whatnot would be the new heroes, but they are. All right, so we'll start with this Breitbart article. Farage to Breitbart. I've never seen so many people scared to say what they think. I think he's spot on right off the bat. Brexit leader Nigel Farage has spoken to Breitbart about the Marxist. Now, this guy, you got to love him. He doesn't play with words. He puts it right out there. Kind of reminds me of me, right? Marxist anarchic threat to free speech and free thought in the United Kingdom, saying that fear is dominating absolutely everything. And he is spot on, I'm sure, there. But I can tell you for sure, he's spot on to what's happening here in America. I'm not saying everybody, but there's a lot of fear-mongering going on in America right now. I mean, all you got to do is look at how the articles now, and I talked a little bit about this yesterday, but the searching, there must be 50-to-1 articles about that. Whoa, we're in a pandemic. It's going to get worse than ever. Of course, they never tie it into the protesters or anything like that. That's fine, but the fact that we going back to work, that hairdressers are actually cutting my hair again, that is the end of the world as we know it. And so fear-mongering is going on right now. The media is trying to make you scared to death to go outside because they believe that fits the agenda to stop Donald Trump. That to me, it's pretty clear. But Mr. Farage made the remarks when he was asked about his recent break with Global Radio LBC, where until last week he had a daily political talk show. Now, he doesn't get into too much detail about why he was basically fired. Of course, it's somewhat of a mutual agreement, that kind of thing. But my sources and the research I've done, including Breitbart, I got to give them some credit there, is that he spoke out about Antifa on the streets of England, of London specifically, and also Black Lives Matter. And he compared Antifa to ISIS. And for that, they had to get rid of him. Now, if you look at it, if you look at the fact that they're tumbling down monuments, they're wearing all black, they have their own flag, They have their own face masks. They're armed on the streets. And they, like in Seattle, and we're going to talk more in detail about that situation in just a moment, they've taken over parts of cities and parts, in this case, of countries, the United States of America. I see there is a comparison between ISIS and Antifa. So I don't know if that's going to get me fired, but I think that Nigel was right. Now, to the depth of the comparison, you could debate, but there is definitely a comparison. I don't see how you can get away from an opinion that there are some similarities in some areas between ISIS and Antifa, and for that he had to go. Because you can say anything you want as long as you toe the narrative of the progressive left. Then you can say anything, do anything, hurt people, attack people, but you can't say the sun's going to come up tomorrow without controversy if you're anything but a hardcore leftist these days. But Farage went on to say, he said, it seems that the real threat we face now is a genuine threat to free speech, you think? I have never known a time when the United Kingdom, which is famed for its huge breadth of media commentary and views, I have never seen so many people so scared to write and say and speak and broadcast what they think. It really is very disturbing. Now, I think that holds true here as well, although people are, I believe, probably a bit more willing to put themselves out there. But you're being policed by the Facebook police algorithm. Before I go any further, when I talk about Facebook, I want to pay due deference to Mr. Algorithm. He's the most powerful person in social media, and I'm on your side, brother. You know, I don't want to get underneath or below Algorithm on his bad side. But aren't people afraid to speak out here? I mean, if you write something, if you say something, I mean, we've had people, a guy just recently basically got canned from his job in the NBA as an announcer on a sports commentary because he simply said the term, all lives matter. And he had to go. I mean, so this is happening here. People are being afraid. You know, there are cases where you had houses that appear to be targeted for flying the American flag. So if you're patriotic, if you have anything Trump, let alone just the American flag stuff, you are being targeted right now. I don't think there's really much dispute about that. And I could be wrong about this. I don't think that I am. But I think one of the reasons why you're seeing these crazy poll numbers, and we actually saw this in 2016, and I believe it's even worse now, is that people that are for Donald Trump, for instance, they don't want to talk to the media. They don't want to talk to pollsters or anything like that. So I do believe these polls, for various reasons, not the least of which people just don't want to say what they feel, are being skewed. So it's happening. What is happening in England, what Mr. Farage is talking about, is very true here. And how about the whole cancel culture? If you don't say exactly the right thing, I mean, some progressives, like for instance, you know, the editor of the New York Times recently had to step down for simply publishing an opinion piece by a senator, a U.S. senator from Arkansas, Tom Cotton, because it didn't comply with the media narrative. Now, keep in mind that the very same newspaper, the New York Times, has printed opinion pieces from members of ISIS and Al-Qaeda, and they didn't get fired. But an opinion piece that supported the president, President Trump, that guy who allowed that article, that editorial piece, had to be canned. So it is definitely happening here. And what really saddens me, and there is a difference between the basic liberalism that our country had a grand tradition of, love them, hate them, whatever. We did have a good tradition of liberals. Now it's totally progressive, which is different because liberals, just on this free speech issue, liberals used to be the big champion of free speech. They were standing up for the First Amendment all across the board. Maybe not the Second Amendment so much, but the First Amendment. Who was a better champion of the First Amendment than classic liberals in the United States of America? But there aren't any classic liberals that are being heard now. In fact, they are being silenced as well. The progressive hardcore leftists, what Mr. Farage calls Marxists, are absolutely have taken over the Democratic Party, the leadership of the Democratic Party. There's really no question about that. I mean, two of what I call, they call them the squad, but I affectionately call them the Twitter twats. I think it makes better sense. But Ilhan Omar and Ocasio-Cortez, both in the last couple of days, have come out and said, you know, make no mistake about it, we are for defunding the police. So, I mean, the left, if you have any doubt that your party, the Democratic Party, has been taken over by hardcore leftists, you need to get truly woke and get your head out of something, sand or something, because it is unbelievable. The Marxists are taking over here as well. Mr. Farage explained that while it was clear the simple face value idea that Black Lives Matter was unarguable. So he's basically saying that concept that Black Lives Matter is inarguable. He doesn't have a problem with the idea. His problem is with the actual organization, Black Lives Matter, and what they're doing. And I agree with him 100%. He said, and while he supported the organization that calls itself Black Lives Matter, hid a radical agenda behind its agreeable sounding name, but used the title to accuse anyone who dared disagree with its hard left views of being racist. And that is absolutely a fact. It's happening here big time, man. If you question any kind of bad behavior, if you question anything about burning, looting, any of that stuff, you are a racist. You're labeled a racist. You can be black and be labeled at the very least an Uncle Tom if you question bad behavior. And it reminds me, like I've been showing this meme quite a bit lately, but it certainly applies big time today. And that is George Orwell basically talking about when a society no longer moves away from the truth, that people who speak the truth will be hated. And there's no question about that. That is happening right now. I'm getting more hate mail than I ever had, and I wear it as a badge of honor because I believe that I'm speaking the truth here. As one of my good buddies, and he knows who he is, tells me that the truth starts now when our show is on, and I really appreciate that. But I'm getting hate mail and hate stuff on Facebook. Keep spreading it, keep pushing it far and wide, keep putting our show out there because we are making a difference. And I thank you, my audience, that is getting bigger all the time and worldwide for that matter now. Thank you very much. And I've got quite a few people listening to me now in the United Kingdom, and I greatly appreciate that. But Farage continued. He said, the truth of it, of course, is that Black Lives Matter, the organization, is open, Marxist, anarchic, wants to abolish our police forces, and is doing its best culturally to literally destroy and erase every piece of symbolism of our long, complex history. And man, do I love that last sentence. It is so true. He says, to erase every piece of our symbolism of our long, complex history. History is complex, and very few places have a longer, more complex history than England, the United Kingdom in general. Some of it good, some of it great, some of it not so good, and some of it absolutely bad, the good, the bad, and the ugly, which is what I try to tell you we need to teach right here in the United States. Because if we don't teach our true history, I'm all for talking about what happened in the South and the Civil War and way on before that. I'm all for talking about the injustices that were done to all races, but especially Black America. Black America has uniquely suffered in the United States, literally was addressed in the Constitution and that type of thing. So I'm with you on all of that. But keep in mind this, if you really want to do away with all vestiges, which they're saying they want to do by tearing down these statues and taking over cities and renaming the bases and all that and taking over NASCAR, if I'm with you on this, Black Lives Matter, if you truly want to do away with all vestiges of pro-slavery and slavery, then I'm with you on this. You need to do away with the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party needs to just simply go away. At the very least, change their name, because the Democratic Party is the party of slavery. Am I saying that current Democrats or people of the Democratic Party now are pro-slavery? No. But if we're talking about doing away with history, whitewashing the history, doing away with it, and anything to do with slavery, and especially calling the truth out for what it truly is, that make no mistake about it, you don't have to take my word for it. Just do a little research yourself, but you could take my word for it. The Democratic Party is absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt, the party of slavery. Period. End of story. And the Republican Party, I'm not saying they're all that in a bag of chips, but they are the party of abolishing slavery. It literally was founded in part to abolish slavery. Get your facts right. If we're going to do away with our complex history, like Mr. Farage says, then the Democratic Party needs to be wiped from the scene. If you're truly true to your principles, Black Lives Matter, that's the way it is. But what I'm afraid is happening to us, and there's this movie, and I talked about it a little bit a couple of weeks ago, called Idiocracy. It's hilarious. If you haven't seen it, it is a hilarious movie. When I first watched it, I was like, this is funny, but there's no way something like this. I mean, it's so far-fetched, it's over the top. Basically, it's about America being run by total idiots. The dumbest of the dumb rise to the top. And I hate to say it, but and there's a scene from it. This actually seems to be a real potential here in the grand old United States of America. I laugh about it, but seriously, it isn't that far-fetched now. All right, moving along. Mr. Farage said, we're at a point where if you criticize Black Lives Matter, the accusation is you don't support equality and you think there should be a huge racial divide. So if you say that, hey, maybe you shouldn't bum rush the Walmart, I showed a video. It's on my John Martin Talks Facebook page. Check it out. Over the weekend, and I didn't even realize this till like yesterday because I was offshore fishing, that a Walmart in Tampa literally got bum rushed by about 200 people that just looted the store. I guess it's a protest of what happened in Atlanta. They just went in one mad rush while it was open. Think of the dangers of that, man. But, you're not even hardly hearing about that. I had to do some digging to even find the story. But there's a film if you want to see it, and it, celebrating culture. I don't know what culture we're celebrating. I don't want to put that on just black people by any stretch, but what kind of culture are we celebrating here? But support equality. You think there should be a huge racial divide. And he goes on to say, and that is where we are. And I'm just not somebody who's prepared to go along with that. And I won't support mob rule. I'm with Nigel, man. Power. I'm not going to support mob rule. Don't expect me to be that person. I support peaceful protests, absolutely. The term mostly peaceful protest means somebody died, got killed, or something burned. So when you hear mostly peaceful protest, it means somebody suffered greatly. That's what that means. But I'm with Nigel, man. I am not for supporting mob rule, even if it is peaceful, like they claim it is out in Seattle. And we'll talk about that in our next story. He says, on how the woke left policed the new orthodoxy of thought, Farage said, fear is what is dominating absolutely everything, pointing out political activists would vilify dissenters online, in the street, and agitate against businesses to deprive funding. Well, he's spot on this. This is absolutely happening in his country. I don't have any doubt about that. And it's absolutely happening here. Think about it. Corporate America, man, has completely rolled over to the progressive leftists. There's another area where classic liberals, think about this, they used to be totally anti-big corporation, did they not? Now they're in bed with them. The progressive leftists love these big corporations because they're giving them money. There's a report out I heard just yesterday after the show, and I'm not saying all this is going to Black Lives Matter, but since the George Floyd incident, tragic as it was in Minnesota, that 1.6 billion, with a B, billion, over $1.6 billion has either been given or committed by corporate America to basically Black Lives Matter and a few other groups over the coming year or two. What are they going to do with that money? They're definitely, I don't know. I don't trust them. Here's the thing they talk about. They say, oh, Black Lives Matter doesn't have any real leadership. It's grassroots and all that. Well, who's getting the checks then? So I just wonder about that. Who is following up on this? And no one seems to really be speaking out about this. I agree with Tucker Carlson. He's been on a good roll lately and probably under tremendous threat, both financially and personally, as we've seen that before, standing up and calling out the fact that there are no real leaders, President Trump seems to be the only one, and so I'm throwing a bunch of Republicans in it that are really speaking out against bad behavior. Everybody is scared to say what they really believe, because you know that a lot of people believe that what corporate America is doing right now is a total sellout and total BS and potentially a threat to not only our domestic tranquility, but to our security as well. Yet they remain silent. And some people may get upset about this, but one of my heroes is Martin Luther King. And I will say, kind of paraphrase something he said, that basically the times that we're living in will not be judged by the evil that men do, but by the good people that stand by and do nothing. And that is exactly what we're seeing right now. I don't know that Martin Luther King exactly foresaw what were happening now, but his words are very prophetic, because good, patriotic Americans right now, maybe they're scared, maybe that's it, but at the same time, they're standing by. And our leaders, this is what really gets me. It's one thing if you're just an average person trying to get back and forth to work and feed your family, but we've elected people. We're supposed to be a representative republic that won't say squat. They're scared to death. In fact, if they say anything, they're rolling over as well. Where is the leadership, man? But Farage went on to say, this did not just spark after George Floyd. So he's saying this was something that they used to take advantage of. He said, this has been long planned, and they were simply waiting for an opportunity. If we lose free speech to this degree, then the world is going to be a pretty dangerous and unpleasant place. Pretty dangerous and unpleasant place. It is already. It is already becoming that there and certainly here. And I haven't really talked about the Atlanta shooting. I'm not going to get too deep into it. There's plenty of stuff and there's plenty of investigation that needs to come from. But one thing I will say is that, you know what, no one really is talking about this. And I'm not trying to get into who's right or wrong. I mean, obviously, if you watch that video, it was pretty peaceful until the point that the gentleman resisted arrest. Now, do I think the guy should have shot him at that point? But there's so much emotion flying, so many things. You know, you don't really know what's actually in the police officer's mind. So I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt on this. But here's something I haven't heard anybody say, and I think some people are going to find this controversial, maybe even some people who are supporters of the show. But I got to tell it like I see it. One thing I think that happened, and I'm not blaming the police officers for this. Let me just say that right up front. But I do believe that gentleman, once the handcuffs started to get put on to him, I believe he was scared for his life. And I'm not blaming the police officers. I'm blaming things like Black Lives Matter and the media for painting police officers as people who literally are hunting black men. And I think that something snapped in him. Obviously, he was under the influence. And I can tell you, as someone who's been there, done that, got the T-shirt, glad by the grace of God, I've been clean and sober for like 32 years. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you will over time. Go back and watch our podcast. I've talked about my situation many times, but by the grace of God, I'm no longer the man I used to be. Thank you very much. But you can check out our podcast multiple ways. You can go directly to John Martin Talks Facebook page, like it, share it with others. Our YouTube channel is up to date now. John Martin Talks, spell it all out. We're also broadcast every night on America's Voice News, not just the Facebook page they're on this morning. Howdy, how are you? But we're on their Roku channel, Fire Stick, Apple TV, download free apps, Android and iPhone. And we're also on Dish Network, Channel 219, and Pluto Network, and many, many things coming up. Check out America's Voice News, and they archive our show daily on their site. But to me, I do believe that the gentleman, I'm not saying that he should have felt this way, but sometimes reality and mental health and all get kind of convoluted there. And I do believe that guy, something sparked in him, not blaming the police once again, but I think he feared for his life based on the narrative that has been fed into him constantly. And so I don't know if anybody else is talking about it, but I blame part of it on Black Lives Matter. I'm just going to say it, the organization and the media for putting this untrue fear out there myself, or fear mongering nonetheless. taking what may be a real spark and bringing gasoline to it. Mr. Farage has been extremely outspoken on this new Puritanism, as he calls it. But he says here, it says, last week, Brexit Party leader condemned the announcement that London's Royal Holloway University was going to purge its own library collection to combat structural racism, noting dryly that the book burning has started. So basically, people removing books and removing things electronically. The book burning, which a big deal, the Nazis, it was a big thing they did in Europe, was burning books, destroying history, rewriting history, all these things. I mean, so these anti-fascist groups like Antifa that Mr. Farage is talking about are actually the true fascists. And I wonder, and I say this kind of jokingly, but it's pretty sinister, I wonder if these new fascists that are taking over parts of Europe and our country, are they going to at least get the trains on time? Because that's one of the things that the fascists used to say, Italy especially, well, at least Mussolini keeps the trains on time. I kind of doubt this group will be able to do that either. But make no mistake about it, they may not be ducks, but they're walking and quacking just like the real fascists. So, if it walks like a fascist and squeaks and talks like a fascist and does what fascists do, like burning books, destroying history, rewriting history, all that, then maybe they're not anti-fascist. Maybe they're just fascist. Offering the explanation on how it could be that young British people caught up in the growing Black Lives Matter protest could be ignorant. Ignorant means you don't know something. Doesn't mean you're stupid. Just means you don't know something. Ignorant of the fact that it was the British Empire that did so much to stamp out slavery worldwide in the 19th century. He said, Farage said, we've got to start teaching history properly, and it was time to make positive arguments to the nation's youth. Absolutely. And people here, they're tearing down Winston and defacing Winston Churchill, probably the greatest leader in World War II, certainly debatable, but I think that Winston Churchill, and I could make a big case for it, I won't do it right now, but one of the greatest leaders in all of World War II to destroy fascism. You talk about Antifa, anti-fascist. Winston Churchill was the leader of the anti-fascist movement, which basically was the Allied powers. They're defacing his stuff. Then Britain itself, man, and Farage is absolutely right about this. I'm not saying that Britain doesn't have things to be ashamed of. Of course they do. But also, that's why it's a complex history. There is no perfect country in that sense. Because you know why? Because every country, every charter, the Constitution, every single government in the world that has ever existed has one major flaw in common. Every one of them, from communism to the U.S., I think the greatest nation that's ever been the United States of America, we have one major flaw in common, and that is the human condition. We absolutely, we all fall short of the glory. The United States of America, the Constitution, would be a perfect document now, and the government, if it wasn't for one thing. There are human beings involved in it, and we're all going to fall short of the glory. Even people that believe in this country are going to have issues from time to time. But the bottom line, and what I think Farage is saying here, yes, people are scared, but we must stand. And one of the things I tell you all the time is that not everybody can be a fighter. Not everybody can be on the front lines fighting, but everybody can be a supporter. So with that said, I'm a fighter. I think you know that right now. Maybe it's just verbally or whatever. I'm a fighter. I'm standing up. I'm willing to say what I believe in. So what I really need, you don't necessarily have to join the fight and be up front. I'll do that, but I need your support. I need you to support what we're doing here, right? And there are going to be ways you can support us in the not too distant future that I'll get into later. But the minimum you can do is like what we're doing and share it as far and wide. Spread the word. That's what I need you to do today. Anyway, let's move on to, let me check my time. Doing okay. This is an article in Politico, and it's written by a gentleman. He basically titles it kind of a letter from Seattle, but his name is Eric Sagaliano. I don't know the gentleman. I think he's the editor there, but he apparently lives out in the Seattle area, and he's essentially saying, and we'll read you the headline in just a second, he's basically saying that Fox News, and he gets into a lot of detail that I'm not going to cover right now, but he's essentially charging that Fox News is not reporting what is accurately and factually happening in what was Chaz and is now CHOP, I think, the 4 to 7 block area in Seattle that's been taken over by Black Lives Matter and some other fringe groups. And he's saying they don't have it right. And, we're going to debate that literally here right now. Don't listen to Fox. Here's what's really going on in Seattle's protest zone. Love how they couch all this right here. It says here, Seattle, it seems, and this is like the guy, he's writing a letter. It seems I live in a city undergoing a totalitarian takeover that will lead to fascist outcomes and could metastasize across the country. Its government has handed over an entire portion of the city to domestic terrorists. This is what he's saying is being portrayed. In other words, that Seattle City Council has decided, and the mayor has decided to turn over a portion of the city to terrorists. You can determine whether that's true or not. He said this group of rogue protesters, this is how they're being portrayed, he says, this group of rogue protesters is attempting to get a stranglehold on the city. This radical army of conquistadors has rolled over the police like Cortez rolling over the Aztecs. Let me show you a picture right now. I think we got it up there. This is a picture, and this is what Politico put. I got this off of the Politico article. This is their main picture that shows the mob. Now, I'm not saying they're attacking anybody. I'm going to show you some other video about that in just a moment. But, man, look at this. Now, Aztecs never faced anything like this. Man, there's more people in that than Cortez had. And, here's the thing. Look at that picture. And there's other pictures I could show you of like that rally that was in Brooklyn about black transvestites or something like that. Thousands of people there. So Trump can't have a rally. Get this straight. Trump's rally is, going to absolutely cause carnage with the pandemic, with the coronavirus, COVID-19. But this stuff right here is okay. MSNBC actually got called out on this yesterday because within an hour, they had one story that was saying how great it was to see all these people out protesting for black transvestites in Brooklyn. Thousands of people, it looked like, just jammed in there. And then in less than an hour, they did a story about how terrible it's going to be to have thousands of people show up at a Trump rally in Tulsa, and how there's even an article I started to do where they called President Trump the great virus spreader, that he's going to spread the virus. So this stuff, these so-called peaceful protests taking over this mob mentality neighborhood in Seattle, no problem there. But Trump rally, it's the end of the world as we know it. It may be the end of Joe Biden as we know it, and that's what it's all really about. What's going on in these 4 back to the story, blocks that shook the world is indeed an occupation. It's an occupation, but he said it looks nothing like the conquista touted on Fox. Here's the thing to me. Does it really, when it comes to the word occupation, and I'm glad he chose that word, does it really matter why? Does it? Because if you can just arbitrarily say my cause is just, and therefore I claim this 7 block area of a city, and it's mine and my followers are taking it, police are not allowed, does it really matter what the issue is? Can we really tolerate occupation of our cities based on whether the cause is just or not? I mean, who determines that? Who determines which is a righteous cause and which is, a crazy cause? I mean, we have already seen how the media portrayed people in militia groups, as they want to call them, in Michigan, who simply showed up. Yes, they were armed. No one got shot. No buildings burned. No police injured. None of that stuff. But they've said those are white supremacists, and how dare they do that? But armed people can literally take over, burn the buildings down, loot and ransack a police precinct, put barricades up where you can't drive through, and yet it's righteous. I mean, to me, it doesn't matter. You can't occupy parts of the United States of America. I didn't support, for instance, the what was that group out there that started in Nevada that ended up occupying a place up in, I think it was in Washington. I don't support that type of stuff. I don't believe, I may sympathize with your cause, but occupying portions of the United States is just not constitutional and a threat to all of us, regardless of your cause, the way I see it. I guess I'm an equal opportunity offender in that sense. But he goes on to say, it seemed by turns like a commune. He's describing what he sees is happening in Seattle. As in Paris in 1871, an archaeo-syndicalistic and small L libertarian dream, a 60s style teaching, just a love fest, basically Woodstock without the bands, a street fair and street market, a camp out, a weekend party, a poetry slam, and a pilgrimage, a school service, a mass healing circle, a humbler urban version of Burning Man. I guess they're running around getting naked. It's a little colder out there than the desert. And, of course, a protest rally. Now, they've changed the name of this place from Chaz to Chop. I guess it more describes it. But there's this video I want to play in just a moment. It's really funny. You may not catch all of it, so I want to set it up for you. I don't know anything about the gentleman that's filming it, but he's filming inside Chaz, now known Chomp, and he comes across a sign. It's hard to tell in the video, but so I want to tell you. It says that only cowards hide behind guns. And right while he's filming that, I want you to hear what the officials, if there are officials in CHOP, what they have to say. Check it out.
Anyway, we still got a pretty full crowd out here. I'd say there's a good 400 people or so. They have completely taken over this precinct. I want to give you guys a little perimeter view here. So this is the East Precinct on 12th and Pine, Seattle.
Folks.
It's Capitol Hill.
Okay, we have a message coming through from the John Brown Gun Club, who is helping us with security. There are some things they want you to know. The John Brown Gun Club is armed for your safety. They are on our side.
If you guys want to get a screenshot of
That's good. I mean, so you couldn't really see it too good on that plywood, but that piece of plywood is propped up against the precinct that has been overrun there. And it says, I guess, referring to cops, that only cowards hide behind guns. But while he's filming it, you hear one of the leaders of the movement of Black Lives Matter out there talking about the John Brown Gun Club is here to protect us. And, you know, they're on our side. So guns are good as long as they are on the side of the issue you want them to be, man. I mean, come on. And, of course, he goes on and on about Fox editing and everything else. I say he just gets really in depth about that. But he says here, such misrepresentations, talking about Fox's editing, reverberate in subsequent reports and commentaries painting a dark picture of the organized protest. The fact that everybody's wearing black and out there is not a dark picture, I guess. And he said that the organized protests are illegitimate. This is what he's saying, Fox says, divided, armed, and violent. Many of these people derive from an on-camera statement Wednesday by Police Assistant Chief Dina Nolette, where she said, we've been hearing from the community members that they have been subjected to barricades. This is a city in the United States. This is what the police chief of that city is saying, who is a black woman, by the way, and a Democrat, I'm sure, because everybody out there is, that they have been subjected to barricades, all the leaders are anyway, set up by protesters with some armed individuals running them as checkpoints. You have to go through an armed checkpoint. This is the city police chief saying this. Nolette said, adding, we have heard antecedently of citizens and businesses being asked to pay a fee to operate within this area. This is a crime of extortion, she said. Anyone who feels threatened to call 911. Now, they've come out subsequently, fairness, and say that they are responding to 911 calls in that area, but it's really slow and tough to get there. So, you know, if your life is being threatened, your place is being burned, just hang on, put you on hold. They'll get there eventually. So what this writer is saying is, don't believe the black female Democrat police chief. Don't believe her. Believe what he is saying. This is not Fox News, by the way, saying it. It's not me saying it. This is a black woman Democrat police chief of a very liberal city saying they can't get in there. And as far as extortion, I don't know about the businesses, but we have a tape. You may have seen this, but if not, you need to, of one of the leaders of this movement extorting money. Play it. Let's check it out.
Okay. I want you to find by the time you leave this autonomous zone, I want you to give $10 to one African American person from this autonomous zone. And if you find that's difficult, if you find it's hard for you to give $10 to people of color, to black people especially, you have to think really critically about, in the future, are you going to actually give up power and land and capital when you have it? If you have a hard time giving up $10, you got to think about, are you really down with this struggle? Are you really down with the movement? Because if that is a challenge for you, then I'm unsure if you're in the right place. So find an African-American person. The white people, I see you. I see every single one of you.
That's good enough. I see you. He's telling you right there, we're watching. Big brother is watching you. Now, I'm just, I mean, if that's not extortion, what is? I mean, white guilt, man, give me a break. $10. Do I have to give $10 to every single black person I see? And here's a question I have for you, because I'm not necessarily, celebrating this, but we talk about diversity. Well, when you talk about African Americans, for some of it good, some of it bad, I mean, going back to slavery, all that kind of stuff, Thomas Jefferson, all that type of stuff. What percentage black do you have to be to get the $10? Can we do like they used to do in New Orleans? And this was black people, by the way, in Mardi Gras, these Mardi Gras clubs, they had the bag test. And there were literally clubs out there run by people of color that they would judge you based on how you compared to a grocery bag. And if you were darker than that sack, you couldn't get in that club. So, I mean, how do we do it? My wife, for instance, her father was black Bahamian and her mother is French Canadian from up in like Maine. So do I have to give her $5 or what? I mean, how do we do? It's just insane, man. And to say that is not extortion, do you really want that to be coming across America? Because here's the thing, and believe me, they're trying to trap President Trump they're trying to goad him into doing something, because the mayor won't do anything, the governor won't do anything. So who does that leave? The President of the United States. But it is a threat to all of us. I'm not even talking about their actions, but if you can occupy, if you can just say my cause is righteous and I claim these 7 blocks, 5 blocks, 10 blocks, whatever, then no place is safe, period. I mean, I remember this happened in my little town of Hawthorne back in the early 70s. This outlaw biker group called the Florida Outlaws, they came into town. We didn't have a police force. And they came in with about 100 of them. I'm sure they did this. And they basically just walked into the stores and took everything, mostly beer and cigarettes, and just hung out for a while. And there wasn't nothing anybody could really do, because these guys were armed and they just claimed it. It's America, I guess. Just claim it. But it goes on to say here, the barriers other guards explained were there to stop cars from driving into the occupied streets as a real fear. So there's keeping you from driving the streets. These are streets that you paid for. If you're a taxpayer in the state of Washington and in Seattle, or even if you've just visited, basically, you have paid for those streets through gas taxes, sales taxes, all kind of different things, but you can't drive a car on it? My God. Last Sunday, now this is something I want you to listen to this description, because I'm going to show you the actual video in just a moment. And before I do, I want to tell you, I'm not advocating anything. I'm just simply presenting the actual footage of what happened, and we'll talk a little bit about it. It says, here's the writer's description, and then we'll watch what really happened. It said, talking about editing, so to speak, last Sunday, a motorist drove into the protest at the very intersection and shot a man point blank who tried to make him stop. So the guy's just trying to make him stop. Hitting his shoulder, he then charged through the crowd with gun in hand and surrendered to the police. So they make it sound like this dude just was on a rampage. Now, I can't say why he was there. He said he was there to see his brother and he got scared. That's what the man said. But check out what actually happened. In the background, this person is filming and they're going, oh, Jesus, and oh, Jesus. I don't know that Jesus had anything to do with this, but check it out. And you tell me right or wrong, if this guy had not had a gun, now he could have been in the wrong for doing what he did, but if he wasn't armed, would he be alive today? Certainly he would not be healthy. That's for sure. Check it out.
Oh God. Oh God. Oh God. Oh God. Oh God. No. No. Oh God. Oh Jesus! Oh no! Oh God, he's got a gun! Oh Jesus Christ! Oh Jesus Christ! Oh God! He's got a gun! He's got a gun! Oh God! Oh my God!
That's good. What you see, it's hard to really tell what all that's happening there. He eventually goes into that crowd and he turns himself into the police. Now, what do you think would have happened to that guy, right, wrong, or whatever, if he was not armed? And notice that he gets out of that car and people give him a wide berth, do they not? So when you have to take your own health into protection, people tend to give you a wide berth. We're almost out of time. I was going to get to this NBA story, but we're not going to be able to get to it. We might cover it tomorrow, but I only got a couple minutes left. I want to play one more video for you. This video to me is one of the most shocking things I've seen and very disturbing. What it is a member of Black Lives Matter that is armed, probably one of this John Brown group, and is randomly picking out, in this case, people don't even look like they're of age, and passing out AR-15s. Check it out.
We just got told there's another group they're meeting with there, and then they'll be moving in a few minutes, so be ready.
Somebody over there age 18 know how to use a gun? Take the clip out and put it back in.
Yo, no one's gonna like fucking ask me walking in here with an after.
Nah, just come right back in.
Hell nah, bruh.
Keep the barrel down.
Hey, keep that down.
Hey, if they arrest me, you got my bond?
I got you.
That's good enough. That, ladies and gentlemen, is happening literally kind of as we're speaking on the streets in Seattle. I don't care what you believe about Donald Trump. If you're an American patriot, if you care about this country regardless of your color, that has to disturb you greatly. And it is coming to a neighborhood near you. If we don't put a stop to it, they're going to keep spreading it. I don't care how you feel about any of these organizations. That, ladies and gentlemen, is absolutely crazy and cannot be allowed to happen. If you support, I'll close with this. If you support that right there, I don't ever want to hear you talk about the Second Amendment, gun control, or anything, because you have lost your right to do that. Hope you've enjoyed the show as much as I've enjoyed bringing it to you. Please go directly to John Martin Talks Facebook page, like it, and share it with others. I'll pray for your family. You pray for mine. Man, we all need to pray for our great nation. But above all else, like I say each and every day, from my heart, from my family to yours, have a blessed day.